everybody. Again, I'm Michelle Shively. I work on the Rural Actions Watershed Program team and also as the Director of Project Development for True Pigments. I wish that we were all actually out here at Pine Run at a place that we call the Back Gate. We're in southern Perry County, so we're between Corning and Shawnee right now on off State Route 155. And like I said, I wish we were all together, and I can't wait to meet you all in real life, but I hope that you're as excited about starting with Rural Action as we are to have you. I want to tell you a little bit more about acid mine drainage and how we typically treat acid mine drainage to try to improve the water quality in area streams, and a little bit of history of just like the coal mining and you know, the impact that abandoned coal mining still has on water resources and land in Southeast Ohio and really all of Appalachia. So thinking back, most of the coal mining would have happened in this area in the late 1800s, early 1900s, although we would have had both surface and underground mining happening really until present day, when we have an active coal mine just down the road at Buckingham, that's in Perry County, just south of Corning, and there's a permit pending for a new surface mine in Athens County, just a few miles down the road west of Gloucester. So although we still have active mining, that really big boom would have happened more than 100 years ago. As the mines were abandoned, you would have had room and pillar mining at that time, and there were lots of void spaces. So think about all the layers of the earth. If you go in, tunnel in, and pull out a big chunk of one of the layers, just leaving those pillars of coal to hold the roof up, you're leaving a lot of void space, a lot of just empty space where the walls of that mine would be exposed. So 3 things that you need to create acid mine drainage are water, oxygen, and the pyrite. That's a mineral, it's also called fool's gold. That's found in and around the coal seam in Southeast Ohio. When you have those 3 things, that starts a chain of chemical reactions that ultimately gives you iron oxides and sulfuric acid. So what we end up with is water that discharges from these abandoned mines for the last 100+ years that has really high concentrations of metals like iron, aluminum, manganese. There are other trace metals as well, but those are the 3 biggies. And typically a pretty low pH. So on the pH scale, think back to like 7th grade science class, pH scale goes from 0 to 14, and 7 would be pure water or neutral. So typically what we're seeing in a lot of these discharges is, I mean, in Monday Creek, we've measured water that has a pH of like 1 something. It's really, really low. Most of the discharges are somewhere between like 3.5 and 5. This one is typically around 4, 4.5 is what the water comes out of the mine at. Anything that's kind of the sweet spot for biological life, for all the aquatic bugs and the fish that live in our streams, you want the pH to be between 6 and 8. So the closer to 7 you can get, the better for the wildlife and aquatic life. Some things are a little bit more tolerant and can live kind of just outside of those zones, but I mean, when you get under 5.5 pH, you're really not going to find too much living in those streams. So what we've been left with is, in the state of Ohio, there's more than 1,300 stream miles that are impacted by acid mine drainage, still to this day. We've been working, Rural Action, the watershed program, has been working with partners and local citizens and landowners since the mid-90s to try to do something about these local streams and to install treatment systems that can restore water quality and to do reclamation work on old abandoned mine land sites that also improves water quality in the watershed. This area has a long history of extraction. So one of the things that, you know, thinking about Rural Action's kind of overall approach to sustainable community development and economic development is thinking about how we can turn assets into like really capitalize on the assets of the region and not think about just the problems. So one way that we've done that in the watershed program is just generally thinking about clean water as foundational to clean communities or healthy communities. Healthy communities need healthy water, and one way that we can help restore that piece is by doing projects like this. Another way that we're seeing this kind of like turning the pollution problem on its head, earlier in one of the other videos we were at the True Town project. So the True Pigments project is really looking at taking this awful problem, the acid mine drainage, and taking the iron oxide and really just flipping that and looking at it through a different perspective and turning that into the solution. So actually using the iron oxide to sell it as a product and then use the money that we make to fund more watershed restoration projects. When you're looking at this site in particular, so like I said, we call this the Bat Gate just because DNR installed a Bat Gate. So you can see that's an entry to the old mine. We call this the Pine Run Bat Gate. And most of these mine discharges are pretty consistent. So they flow generally at the same rate throughout the entire year. There's a bit of seasonality, but you know, they're pretty consistent. And you can probably see like this water looks pretty gross. So there's this wild looking lime green algae. There are definitely different kinds of algae and bacteria that really like these very acidic environments, and some that really love to eat iron. So of course those types of organisms would be drawn to a place like this, but generally the kinds of fish and bugs that we would expect to find, we do not find here. So this water, this is all water that's coming out of that mine right there. If you look at it, it looks like the water, I don't know if Shannon can get a good picture or not, but we can both vouch for this, that it looks like the water is maybe like, what do you think, 5 or 6 inches deep, because you can see the orange bottom, right? But I'm gonna hand this to Shannon for a minute and then take it back. Usually this is a little more dramatic in person because I'll ask someone how deep it looks and then I'll get in and then you'll see what happens, but just, you'll have to humor us. All right. So as you can see, it's a lot deeper than it looks. And I'm actually, if I really tried, I could probably I've gotten in here to my hip before. So you can see it's much deeper than the 5 or 6 inches that it looks. And what's happening is, Shannon, can you get up closer and try to see if you can see how the iron is coming up off the bottom? So you can see that all of this is just, it's like this, you know, feathery kind of bunching of the iron particles. And that's called flocculant or a precipitate, right? So what's happening is when the water comes out of the mine, it's actually very clear. So if I took it, after I mucked it up, but if I take this, can you see that? It's clear. So off the top, the water just looks clear. You can't tell just by looking at it that it has metal in it because all the metals are still dissolved because it's at a low enough pH. If you smell your hand after you touch it, it smells like if you have change in your hand and then you smell your hand, that very metallic smell. That's what my hand smells like now. But you can't see the iron until it starts reacting when it's in the channel, when it's got interactions with the surface, with surface water, and the pH starts to actually go up a little bit higher. And as that happens, the iron will actually fall out of solution. So it becomes its own precipitate and it falls to the bottom of the stream. So the problem with this, because I'm sure some of you are thinking like, this looks terrible, right? But is it toxic to people? Is it like, what's the big problem here? So I am now standing, you know, in at least probably about 2 to 3 feet, and I'm not even to the bottom, like at least that much of this iron sludge that's covered the bottom of this channel. Think about if I came to your house with dump trucks full of this iron sludge and I stuffed your refrigerator full, I put it all over your bed, I filled your house with orange sludge. Do you want to live there anymore? Probably not. At least not until you clean out all the orange sludge, right? And what we've done when we have streams that have this much iron sludge and this much iron precipitate that's on the bottom is we've taken away all of the habitat for aquatic creatures in these streams. We've made it impossible for them to live there. That's just one of the issues. That's the iron issue. When you think about the pH issue, if you've got a pH of 4, 4.5, that's certainly outside of that sweet spot for aquatic life to be able to even survive in this water. We also have several different discharge sites in southeast Ohio that have a lot of aluminum as well. And aluminum acts differently than iron. Iron, the biggest issue is that it smothers habitat, and it can actually, in a place like this that has this much of it, it can actually coat fish scales and actually smother aquatic creatures too, because they just can't get enough oxygen because they're getting coated with the iron. But aluminum is a little different because it's a neurotoxin. Just a very small concentration can be toxic to fish and to bugs. So if you have a site that has all three of those problems, it's really difficult for anything to survive in that water. So what we do, you might have already jumped to this in your mind, but we have very acidic water that has metals that fall out of solution as you raise the pH. So the natural solution for trying to remedy this problem is to get the pH of the water to go up and to capture the metals as they fall out of solution. And so some of our passive systems actually have settling ponds or wetland areas where those metals are captured in those pieces of the system before they go into the stream. Down here at the Doser, we just use the tributary channel. So Pine Run is a tributary to the West Branch of Sunday Creek, which is one of the West Branch and the East Branch of Sunday Creek are both about 14 miles long, and they run into the main stem of Sunday Creek. And West Branch goes in right at Gloucester. And so in this case, we are using this Pine Run channel as a treatment zone. But when you think about it, this whole valley the stream has been dead for more than 100 years. So it's not that we're sacrificing this area, it's just that we're not restoring it. And that's another thing to think about with AMD treatment, is that there's a lot of cost-benefit analysis. If you think back to that 1,300 stream miles in Ohio that are impacted by AMD, we don't have enough money or capacity, resources to restore all 1,300 of those stream miles. So when we're doing watershed work, we really are trying to look at the overall watershed, look at it holistically, and figure out where we can kind of get the biggest restoration bang for our reclamation buck. So, we don't have tons of money. It is a lot of money, but it would cost an astronomical amount of money to restore all of the abandoned coal mine impacts that are in Ohio. So we look at where we can get the most stream miles to come back to life. So in a lot of cases, the Doser is a really good option, because even though we're not restoring Pine Run, we are taking care of all of the acidity and all of the metals that were coming in from Pine Run, which is more than 50% of what was going into the West Branch. We're able to take care of that before it hits the West Branch. So even though right at the Doser site you don't see that restoration and the fish coming back there, 3 miles downstream, it's totally different ballgame. So we have actually a site that's about that far down. Before we put the Doser in, that site on the West Branch of Sunday Creek had 0 fish. We did the fish sampling a couple years, literally 0 fish. I'm not exaggerating. And so we stopped doing sampling there because there's no point. And then after we put the Doser in, just a couple years after, we had 17 species of native fish that had come back to that site. And then in the last couple years, we've had, I think we're up to 20 or 21 species at that site. So it's a really great story of restoration and these areas coming back to life downstream of our treatment systems. In Monday Creek, I'm pretty sure back in the 90s there were only 4 species of fish, and now we have, I want to say 36 or 37. I should have looked before I came out here, but Nate can correct me later. But it's really an amazing story, and we're really lucky now to be watershed coordinators at this point in time, because 20 years ago people were saying these streams were dead as a bag of hammers and that there was no way that you could ever bring some of these spots back to life, and it was just a really sad story. But now in 2020, the good news is that we've proved that you can bring these areas back to life, and we've seen fish in places where we've never seen fish. Had people also tell stories about seeing more mink and other types of wildlife in areas where we've done reclamation on abandoned mine sites. So we're definitely showed that it can be done. and excited to use all that we've learned over the last 25 years to do even better work in the future.